Okay, I'm going to introduce you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Today is the last day of April. Today is April 30th, Thursday. This is our last series of Ask the Expert for the month of April. And as always, I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Zegas, our ABA therapist. I know that we're going to do some questions and answers today. So during this presentation, any questions you guys have, please write them in the chat, either publicly or privately, and we will, I'll read them off to Rebecca as well. For those of you joining us on Facebook, same goes for you. You can leave them in the comment section, and I'll read them off to Rebecca. So Rebecca, to you.
All right. Hello, everybody. Happy last day of April and the last day of Autism Awareness Month. I have some questions that I got in advance that I did put together into some slides so we can talk over to give everybody a chance to send their questions in now. So we'll get started there. One of the questions we got was that their child, it feels like it's a constant struggle of control and manipulation. And this is for a teenager. And there's a struggle between understanding what is regular teenager behavior and what is autism. So while it is important to kind of decipher those and separate them a little bit, it's also important to know that we can address any behavior regardless of diagnosis, regardless of really any other factor, because ABA can be used for all human behavior. Oops, sorry. Oh boy. All right, hang on. For all human behavior. So for this specifically, when we have a child that really seems to try to gain control of the situation, it's telling us a few things. That one, maybe that situation isn't reinforcing enough for the child, that there's something about that situation that they obviously don't want to participate in. And if we can balance things by giving the teenager or the child some control over certain things. So what can they be in control of versus what the parent is in control of, and setting those clear boundaries and those clear expectations that if it's something that the parent is in control of, meaning the parent can make the final decision and tell the child what to do, that's what has to happen, and it needs to be non-negotiable. So if it's something that's been decided that parent has the final say, we need to make sure that we're not going back and forth and negotiating and changing that decision that you originally made. Because then we'll just be teaching the child that, okay, well, if you fight enough, you're going to get your way. And that's not the precedent that we want to set. It might be difficult to follow through on these things, especially if a child can really dig their heels in. A teenager, being a teenage girl is often, a trigger on its own for some of these behaviors. So just keeping your cool as best as you can, using if-then statements and first-then statements, like first you need to do the thing that I'm asking you to do, and then you can do what you want to do. And leaving it there, not going with a lot of back and forth, not a lot of discussion. When your child is ready to do what they're supposed to do, let them do it, and then move on. But again, I don't know that we necessarily need to tease out the difference between regular behavior and what's happening because of the autism. If there are behaviors that are maladaptive and behaviors that are not going to serve a good function or purpose for the child, either now or in the future, it's still something that we would want to address. I hope that answered that question. It was kind of a lot, which might benefit like a more personal conversation about the specific situation. But I just wanted to give some general comments about that. Another question that I've heard a lot is, I can't get my child to do something independently when I know he can do it. What can I do? And we talked last week about prompting and reinforcement. And likely what has happened if your child won't do something on their own is we've created this phenomenon called prompt dependence. So I've had students before who would partially reach their hands out to go pick something up, but wait for me to either partially prompt or gesture for them to complete it. There could be this not necessarily understanding of what exactly they're supposed to do, or those prompts have been so embedded into the teaching and not faded out as quickly as possible that your child is just waiting for you to prompt them for the next steps. So how do we fix this? We fix this by fading those prompts out as quickly as possible based on those steps that I went over last week. So as soon as you start to see your child do something with a lesser prompt, you want to make sure that you're not giving that higher prompt if you don't need to. Let them do it as independently as possible. And most importantly, we have to reinforce independence. Why do it if it's much easier for someone to do it for you? And this is so common that we talk to parents, like when we're teaching children to get dressed. In the morning, it's so much easier for the parents to just throw their clothes on and get them out the door to get to school. But if the child wants to go to the park after school, that's probably a good time to work on independently dressing, because you can then set that contingency for your child. Well, you need to get dressed by yourself because I know that you can. And when you're changed and ready to go to the park, then we can go. So making sure that you're having that reinforcement come right after that activity that you want them to complete independently, and making sure that that reinforcement is strong enough that it's better for them to do it on themselves, on their own, than to not. The next one.
Rebecca, before you go on, can I ask a question about
Please.
that?
Mm-hmm.
So is there some kind of reward system you can offer so that you're able to fade that prompt? Because how would they be able to know not to be dependent any longer?
Yes. So again, in the slides that we went over last week, we discussed all about reinforcement and using the bigger reinforcement for the more independent responses.
Right.
So let's just say, for example, you're using M&Ms if your child likes M&Ms. So doing something independently might get you 3 M&Ms or 4 M&Ms, but if you still need help with it, we'll still reinforce going through the steps, but you might get a much smaller reinforcer. And if you are doing physical prompting, you'll feel when your child is starting to move towards the next steps on their own, or starting to do that activity on their own versus you physically moving their hands. So as soon as you start to feel your child making any effort to go on, that's when you can start removing your prompts and start putting in that reinforcement. And if the reinforcement isn't natural, like going to the park, you might need to add in extrinsic reinforcers that we talked about last week, whether it's the snacks or the praise or the high fives, things like that, to really reinforce that independence.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions before I move on to the next one? Okay. So I'm seeing a lot from our clients telling us that school is sending home worksheets for their children to work on, but their children have fine motor issues and writing is hard. Many of them don't like writing, and they have a difficult time even sitting still long enough to do any of the worksheets. You know, what should we do? What I think is happening is schools are being responsible for sending homework, sending things home for your children to do, but they can't send home an adult doing flashcards. They can't send home an entire science project that they can embed all of these different skills into. So they're kind of resorting to having to just send worksheets. So what I'm suggesting is to look at the worksheet, take the skills that are intended to be taught on the worksheet and build them into daily routines, other play activities, or other ways. For example, if it's an adding worksheet, instead of doing it on the worksheet, if your child asks for cookies, that's a great time to practice the adding. Show them you have 2 plus 3. Now how many cookies do you have? And it's likely that that's how they're being taught in school. They're likely being taught in a very hands-on way, in real life experiences, while engaging in manipulatives and materials and all sorts of things that can teach these skills, and they're probably not being instructed through the use of worksheets in school. So taking what's on that worksheet and trying to build it into other different daily activities or with materials that you have at home. Any questions before we move on? No? Okay, here's the last one that I have. Basically, there are some days that I just don't have it in me. Be a teacher, I just can't do it. You know, how bad is it? What happens if I don't, if we have a day where we say, forget it, we're not doing it today? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. Do we want you going days and days and days without working with your child? No. But you need to give yourselves a break. You are not going to be effective in what you are trying to do if you have completely burned your candle at both ends. So again, I think I said this like the very first one. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I, for one, am not expecting that our clients learn a ton more skills during this time. Many of them are. Many of them are really adapting. Parents are doing a nice job implementing things. But if it isn't going to work for a certain family, we're going to work around it and see how we can help everyone just get through this time. But no one expects you to sit at the table for 2 to 3 hours, work straight through. That's not realistic, and it will drive everyone insane. So give yourself a break. If you need to end your day at 11:30, end your day at 11:30 and watch TV. If you wake up on a Tuesday and you're not in a place to deal with math or science or identification or any of those things, it's okay to take a day off. We're all allowed those days, especially now more than ever. So just do your best, and it's okay if you don't feel like being a teacher that day.
But Rebecca, would the school understand that though? Because I feel like there's this constant expectation from their end that we should be performing at the same level that they are.
I think each school is different, but at the end of the day, there's nothing, they can't, like, what can they do? You know, so one of the schools that I work in, if the children can't log on and be a part of the Zoom, the parent just needs to send an email that says, we did what we were supposed to do today. And not that you should lie, but doing what you're supposed to do at the level that you can do it is the most that people can expect.
Right.
I have another student where the district just sent home this huge list of skills to work on, but the parent has had absolutely no training on how to do any of that. So they can't realistically expect it. The hard part is the teachers and the schools are being told that they have to provide X, Y, and Z. Right. They have to expect that students come, but they're doing what they're being told. And I question if the actual professionals involved, like as a person, if they actually believe that you can do that. You know what I mean? It's this like, everyone's doing what they're being told to do to say, we're doing the best that we can.
Right.
And I think that as a parent, you have to be upfront and say, I'm doing the best that I can. This is not how life works.
So there's a question here, and I have my own question. The question here says, I've been doing discrete trials at home with my son, but he seems not to be able to get identifying numbers well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so how does one do
Sure.
that?
Do you know, are you currently talking to that person, Jen?
Yes.
Okay. Can you ask A, how old the child is, and if numbers had been worked on prior to all of this?
All right. So she can hear you. So hopefully she will respond to me.
Okay. So he's 6.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. And were numbers worked on before?
So we actually started, the teacher actually said she started with 1 to 10. So I continued with the 1 to 10, but it seems it's just like it's not we're not having um we're not having the is mixing the numbers up.
Right.
So we decided to take it one at a time. So she said maybe we can start from 1 to 5 only,
Mhm.
instead of doing 1 to 10 at once.
Right. That was
So
going to be my first recommendation. And I would even drop it down to 1 to 3.
okay.
And make sure that he can discriminate between 1, 2, and 3 before you move on to any of the higher numbers. And it depends on what other skills that he has. Because there's also that question of, is number ID the best use of his time right now? You know, are there other functional skills? Can you build in the number ID functionally? Is he able to count?
He can do other numbers
Mhm.
outside 1 to 10. He can identify like 11 to 20, 25.
Mhm.
But with those numbers, he mixes 6, 9, 19 up.
Right.
Yeah. But other than that, he's good with those numbers.
Yeah, and the 6 and the 9 make sense because they're similar but just flipped.
Mhm.
And once you get above 19, those get confusing for most, children his age.
Mhm.
But I would also try to work on it not just through discrete trial. Work on it like if you're watching a video, and if it's a kid's video and numbers come up. There are so many different apps or things like that that you can use that might be more interesting to him, because if you think about it, like, how fun is it to just identify numbers that are put in front of you on index cards,
Mhm.
especially when you're at home and that's not normal. So maybe finding other more engaging ways to work on the number identification that might kind of pull his attention in more.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my question to you is that with the school year prolonging the way it is, what are your thoughts on some of us who actually have to now go to IEP meetings?
Mhm.
How, because I just had my case manager email me and wants to have an IEP meeting, and I'm just like, what
I
are we
know.
really talking about?
I had an IEP meeting this morning. It's
I mean, what advice do you give parents in terms of, like, because I know this is a very controversial area of topic right now.
honestly, the advice that I give right now is you have to have your IEP meeting basically by law. Like, the school has to do it within this right amount of time. Like, they're not putting any like stop holds on that. So unless something was completely mastered before we left, we're recommending to keep all of the other goals in the IEP
Okay.
and then request a 30-day review or another IEP meeting
Right.
within a month of going back to school.
Cool. Okay.
Because our students are going to have to be assessed again.
Right.
They're likely not going to be exactly where they are. I mean, we hope they won't be. We hope that they'll have gained a lot. Some things that they learned might have regressed a little bit.
Right.
But I'm looking at that first month of being back, even in our clinic, being an assessment time
Got it.
and reassessing where they are then.
Right.
So getting the goals out that are mastered or that you don't want worked on anymore, but the ones that are still important that haven't met mastery, keeping those in and then reassessing after school starts.
Right. Okay. Okay. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's like doing them now as a formality
Right.
to have the IEP done, but then still having that chance to have that face-to-face meeting after they've been reassessed.
And then how do we get them? I mean, because I know the government is talking about transitioning back for everybody. Any thoughts on how do we begin to transition our kids back to therapies and school and thoughts like that?
I would start by trying to get on some sort of schedule. Now, I know personally, I'm dreading when we go back. I have not been getting up as early as I should be. I've been staying up much later. Trying to get back on some sort of schedule where you have to wake up at this time, you need to get up, you need to brush your teeth, you need to get dressed, and you need to come downstairs. And then you start your daily routine at home, which could be make breakfast and then you get to hang out for an hour. And then you do, a little bit of work and then you go outside and play. But starting to make that routine again of what a normal Monday through Friday would look like in terms of waking up, meal times. I know that with this time, like no one knows what time it is and we're kind of all just eating throughout the day. And, so setting a breakfast time, a lunch time, snack, dinner, to make those things that an easy transition for whenever we do go back, because that's what it's going to be like.
Right. And then I don't know if in your circles, I know I'm monopolizing because I missed the last couple of sessions, so this is perfect. Is there a sense that the extended, typically we have that extended school year part. In your circles, what are people saying in terms of what to expect?
People are saying that it depends on the district. If they do open by ESY, some districts are planning on extending it for the whole summer, so there won't be a big gap. Some districts are saying that perhaps they will just go back in August. I don't think there's any way of knowing, because the problem is going to be we're not going back like normal. So, because there's no way to have as many students in a classroom,
right?
Even like the special ed classrooms, that big. So what's the schedule going to be like? Is it going to be a morning session and an afternoon session? I still think districts are trying to figure that out without knowing what the governor is going to be saying. Right. But my gut is telling me to not be hopeful for ESY before. Maybe July. Maybe they would be able to start it in July. But personally, we're trying to reopen our center-based services in June. But they're going to look very, very different than they did. We'll have fewer kids in the building, fewer staff, longer sessions, so we have less transitions in and out of the building, less interactions between the children.
Wow. It's
going to be very difficult for us to get our students to wear masks.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. So what is parents supposed to do about these masks that you're supposed to wear to go to stores for?
So I'm contemplating now trying to put out some procedures to start to teach children to wear them now.
Okay.
I'm very torn because I don't know how I do my job without my student seeing my face and without me seeing his face. Yeah. Like verbal imitation programs. Like it's such an up close and personal therapy that I'm struggling with it. I was looking at those clear face covers to see if we could use those instead. But if you do foresee needing to take your child out into public, so if you have to go grocery shopping and have to take your child, trying to work and desensitize on the masks, but maybe not the regular mask, maybe just a bandana tied around. Or they're making those like shrugs that are almost like a scarf, but you can pull it up. Something a little less intrusive.
Yeah.
But it's the biggest concern I have. How we are going to manage that with students who have never had to wear a mask, never worn anything on their face before. And I don't think that this is different for a 2-year-old as it is for an 18-year-old. This is going to be something very difficult to teach. So try desensitizing now as much as you can. And I'm looking to put together some kind of instructions on how to do that.
All right. Perhaps we'll have you back if you do figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'll share it with you anyways if you wanted to send it out. But I'm working on that, especially if we're thinking of hopefully opening in a month. Okay. We'll see.
Anybody else have questions for Rebecca?
I have one up here. Hang on. I'm doing his school, how to make it fun. I'm having difficulty with my son doing his schoolwork, how to make it fun for him. This started since we have had this lockdown. We've never had a problem like this before, but since the lockdown, it has been difficult. I have tried rewarding, but it never works. Please help. I think it kind of goes back to the very, very simple and small demands first. So the goal is to not sit down and work for 45 minutes. The goal is do this one question and then you can be done. Do that for a couple days. All right, let's do 2 questions and then you could be done. And working up. Does your child like TV or the iPad or anything? And I'm not sure if he would understand this, but what we're doing with another one of my students right now is we set a timer for, let's say, 35 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I plan an activity to do with him that I know should only take him 5 minutes.
Okay.
So if he wastes time, so that timer is how much TV time he gets after our session.
Okay.
If he finishes his work in 5 minutes, he gets the whole 30 minutes of TV time. But the harder time he gives me during sessions, the more time he protests, the more time he doesn't do his work, the less time he ends up getting for the TV. So this particular student understands concepts of time. Like, he understands that he wants 30 minutes of TV versus 5 minutes of TV. So if your child would understand that, that could be a strategy. If not, I would start with the teeniest, tiniest response.
Okay.
And it might be come to the table and write your name on the paper. Okay, you wrote your name? Sweet. We'll do some more later. So nothing says that the learning has to happen in this like long, consistent amount of time. It can happen scattered throughout the day.
Okay.
So I would try that first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Yeah. What about parents? I mean, to your point about that, trying to balance that with your own work. Some parents are also even in school, right? So you're trying to do schoolwork and then trying to do work and then trying to do that. So there's a lot of struggle about giving kids more screen time. But sometimes that's the only way that you can get anything done.
Right.
Any thoughts about that?
And there are so many educational apps
Okay.
that if they're going to be on screen time more than they would have because they're home, but you're still working or you're still going to school or you're doing whatever, maybe setting the rule that you need to be on the educational app for, 45 minutes before you're allowed to access YouTube or your games or whatever. And you can set the parent controls or the guided access on their device so they can't get out of the academic app. And if that's how your child has to learn right now, that's how your child has to learn. And I'm seeing all over all of the Facebook pages I'm on for, ABA professionals and things like that, everyone taking this experience now to change the way we do things moving forward, like acknowledging that our students are very drawn to technology. And it's not just students with autism, we all are. I mean, you should see the setup I have here. I have a laptop, I have an iPad, I have extra keyboards, I have like all this stuff happening.
Right.
And like, why are we not using technology as much as we are now?
Right.
So there's there's a website called Boom Learning, and it's basically all of these activities that I would normally make paper materials for that are right up on the screen. I can create them. I could send them to a parent. Each child gets their own login, and they can sit and they can do their Boom cards themselves. If it's on an app, if it's on an iPad or a Kindle or something, they can just press the right answer. So why are we not using this more? So everyone's saying that they're in the works of revamping how they do all of their instruction, even when we get live and face-to-face. Social skills are obviously best taught face-to-face with no technology. But if our students are learning so much and interacting so much with the technology right now, it's how we all are in real life anyways. Like, it's how everyone learns. So trying for those things.
Okay, sounds good. Does anybody else have any questions? All right. Well, we want to thank you so much, Rebecca, for these past 5 sessions. It started
Crazy.
the first day of autism awareness and or the second day, and here we are 5 weeks into it, and it's been a lot of fun and learning from you. So thank you so much. We really appreciate all the information. I know that
It's
people
been
who,
fun.
yeah, people who view it afterwards and things like that, so we just want to say thank you
You're welcome.
for that. It's been let me unhook my thingy here. So today I'm like, okay, I got to jump on and
Yeah.
also learn from the expert. I needed to. So does anybody else have any questions for Rebecca before she signs off?
And my email address is on the very first slide. So if anybody has anything that they want to talk about offline or a little more privately, please feel free to send me an email. Really just trying to help anybody that needs it right now.
Well, it's definitely appreciated because we started this whole month of April, not even knowing how long we were going to be in for. And now we're talking long term and we're like, wow. So let's see what May and June brings. So,
All right.
you know,
Sounds good.
yeah, sounds good. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Take
Good to
care.
see you all.
Thank you.
Night for my last session tonight at 7 o'clock. All right.
Have fun.
Okay. All right. Bye.